This video is sponsored by Game Toppers. Turn your own kitchen or dining room table into a premium portable game solution at a fraction of the cost. Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 767. Today we're going to take a look at Joan of Arc. This is a Orléans draw and write game. So it's basically a roll and write or flip and write, or in this case a draw and write game set in the Orléans universe. By the same designers, I believe, as the Orléans game. And it has a lot of the similar themes and scorings and things like that in the sort of original game of Orléans. Now what it means by draw and write is you actually will draw chits out of a bag and then draft those as players and then take actions associated with that to, mark different things on your board, different tracks, build different buildings, build different routes and all those kinds of things like that. So let's go and take a look at it at the table, and then I'll come back and tell you what I think. Okay, so here is everything that you get in the box of Joan of Arc. You can see I've got some sheets here left over from some games that we've played. A couple things to notice. You get some sheets, get some pencils, of course, to mark everything down. You get a bag with various different colored tokens in there, which I'll explain. You have here a deck of building cards. So one of the neat things that this does is you can actually build these buildings. You can see this little section right here. So this is kind of like the default sort of standard game setup. So if we zoom in, you can see there's kind of like level 1 buildings, level 2, level 3, level 4, and so on. Now, once you play the game enough or you get sick of playing with these buildings, then you can randomly deal out buildings from this deck. So in here we have 6 level 1 buildings, 6 level 2, and so on. And you'll shuffle up and deal 4 of these out to the table. And then when you take the action to build the building, instead of you sort of selecting that you've built that building and then everybody else crossing it out, because only one person can build a building, you'll just ignore this section entirely, take the card in front of you, which will give you the upgraded special ability. So you can see in this case, if we get the blue token, we would get 2 money if we want to activate it for that building. So instead of writing it down, you just kind of draft the card in front of you. Everybody knows you're the one that's got it. And then obviously they don't have access to it because they don't have the card. There is also here a deck of cards for playing the solo mode, like so. And so you flip this over and then the AI will do the action kind of based in a certain order, going either up or down. And the way this works is you flip this card over and then the next card will tell you to start from the bottom, or it'll tell you to start from the top, like this example here. And so you play that. And then on the other side of the sheet, you can see this is the multiplayer sheet here. If we flip this over, there's a whole other section here. So all of these sheets in the pad are double-sided. You've got kind of the multiplayer side, which if you're done using, don't throw it away, because you can flip it over and play again later with it on the single player side. So how does the game work here? So let's just take a fresh sheet and then we can look at some examples of play. Now the first thing you're going to do here is, you can see on this side, just tuck it in a little bit there, based on the number of players, you're going to cross out certain numbers of these bags. So in a 2-player game, you're going to cross out the 3, the 4, and the 5. Because the way that the game works is you're going to play through drawing chits out of this bag, drafting, and then using the chits in the pool for their different abilities. Once the bag is empty, you'll then cross out that, refill all the bags up with all the chits, and then play again. And so in the case of a 2-player game, you're going to do that twice, go through the bag twice. In a 3-player game, you wouldn't have crossed that out, you would have done it 3 times, and then as you go through, you cross these out. Now it's worth noting that at the beginning of each round, depending on the number of players, you're going to draw a certain number of chits out of the bag and set them aside into the discard pile, so to speak, and then those will not be available. So you don't always have access to, every single chit through every single round. Some will be removed at the beginning of the round. Now what is the main sort of thrust of the game? Well, that would be this map over on this side here. So everybody starts off in Orléans, and you're going to be drawing routes either through roads or through the rivers, and then collecting the goods and things and different icons, building outposts to kind of thematically establish trade. These are trading outposts. At the end of the game, you're going to multiply the number of outposts that you have times the furthest sort of little golden star that you've got to on this track. So if you had 5 outposts built and you got up to here, you'd multiply it 5 times 5, and that would be 25. You're also going to add into the multiplier these citizens, which I'll just show you the one here at the top of this map here. So we can see here, whoever has the most sort of built outposts will be able to circle this citizen and add that to their multiplier. So in the case, let's say I built 5 and I had the most, I would then add this one. That would give me 6 times 5. And then there are other citizens on the board or on the pad as well that you can get access to, which I'll talk about. But you'll add those also into the multiplier. You also get points here. Anytime you cross off one of these different shield icons, you can see you're going to add those points up and so on. So let's get into it a little bit here. So like I said, you've got these basically 6 different types of actions that you can do. But again, these can be buffed up and enhanced by building buildings of a certain type that'll kind of enhance the basic action. And there's some other things that you can do with them. So let's take a look at the basic actions, and we'll just work through these 6 here. So first thing you can do, if you take this farmer token here, this white token, then you can cross off any of these trade goods here. So when you cross off anything in these boxes, in the trade good or in the bank, you can choose any row that you want, but you always have to do left to right. So let's say the first time I did it, I crossed off the wheat. The next time I could cross off the wheat to the right of that, or I could start a new row and then start working my way across there. Now anytime you fill up all the way across, let's say we filled all the wine jugs over there, then we would say, okay, we got that, that'll be 3 points for us at the end of the game. Now, when you fill up any column, let's say you're choosing different goods, then you get the bonus here at the bottom. So in this case, you would get 2 coins, you get a monk, you get 4 of these books here, which I'll explain in a minute. And then if you ever see anything like this, it has that, it's yellow and it has kind of the little hexagon around it. If I were to get to this one first, I'll circle that. And again, remember, this is a citizen, which we're going to add to our multiplier of all the built outposts like that. If I get to that first, everybody else will cross that off. So I've gotten it first, and it's not available for anybody else to get. Okay, so that's that first action here. And then the next one here is this warrior here, and then you can build a route. So how do you do that? Well, starting from Orléans, you can choose and pick any of the roads, not the rivers, any of the roads starting from there. So let's say I went down this way, I was kind of color that in. So in this case, I would be able to mark off the wheat and then mark off a book. And then on my next time that I chose a warrior, I can then move from anywhere that I want based off any road that I have. So I can go back up from here, from Orléans. I can go down and extend anywhere here from the 8 and go any which way that I want. And then of course, since in this case you specifically crossed off a wheat, then you cross off, that's a very specific good. And then the book track, obviously down here, anytime you get a book, is right here. You start to cross this off. And as you start to cross off the books, you'll get these bonuses like we saw before. And then again, these are kind of first come, first serve on any of these little yellow hexagons. And again, you want to try to beef this up. You don't want to ignore this because this is your multiplier for all your trading outposts. So that is the warrior action there. Next thing you could do would be this little worker fella here in the brown. And so in this case, you can either get a coin or you can spend a coin to build a trading outpost. So let's talk about the coin in the bank first. So you always start with 1 coin already circled on your board. The game does that for you. Now as you accrue coins, so if I took this guy here and I wanted to, make it a coin, again, you're working left to right, but you can start in any row you want. So if I wanted to start here, I could start circling these and then go here and so on as you start to accrue coins. Now, this box works a little bit differently. So once let's say I circled all these across here, then I get this bonus here. So I get access to a monk, which I'll explain the monk in a minute. Here I would get 4 points. Here I would get that other citizen. And then again, everybody else have to cross it out if I got there first. The columns work a little differently because when you spend money, because remember, if you look back up here, you can either get a coin or spend a coin to build an outpost. If I spend a coin, it's the same idea. I can pick any row and then I can start spending money going across this way. So you always have to spend left to right, but again, you can pick any row. Now, this is how you access the bonuses on the bottom. You actually have to spend those coins to get access to this. So this, in this case, I would get access to a free farmer action there, and then I would get this bonus if I was the first person to do that. Anytime you get one of these blue symbols here, you start to cross off or circle these points. So you start to get extras here. Now it's worth noting that anytime you have to get a good and maybe you fill this up, or you actually collect a coin and you fill this up, then you don't have anywhere to put it, so you just get to move up this track. So that's another kind of strategy you can do to start to beef up this track and score a lot of points there. So that's how you do kind of getting and spending money like that. Now, when you spend the money, of course, you cross it out here, and then you can go build over here a trading outpost. Now, everybody can build the trading outpost in Orléans. Once you do that, then you've got at least one. And then you can build any trading outpost that you have a connection to, either through rivers or roads, and you'll circle that one like this, and everybody else will have to cross that one out because only one person can build any of the other trading posts beside Orléans. So you're going to try to watch whatever other people are doing and which routes they're kind of taking there. Now the next action here is simply to just get a book, and we saw that. You cross out the next section on the book track. Here is a little different. You can either get a coin, or you can cross off a water route, which we can see here works just like the warrior action here. So you cross this off, you'll collect, in this case, some cheese. You can work down here and get some wine and some thread and so on like that. Now the last basic action here is you can get a coin, or you can build a building. Now if you're not playing with the cards, then you will go down here, and then you can see the building cost goes up. So the level 1 and level 2 buildings cost 1 coin. These each cost 2 coins, and the level 5 also costs 2 coins. When you spend that coin by crossing off the bank, you will then go and select which of the buildings you want, or in the case of if the cards are out, you'll just take the building. If you're playing with the board here, let's say I grab the stables. So I'll grab that one, I've got that one, you could circle it, just to make it clear. Everybody else will have to cross off that building because they will not have the ability to build the stable. Only one person can build one of these buildings. What the buildings are is basically an improved, enhanced action of the original action. So if we look at here, let's look at the cards, it's a little bit easier to read. So for example, here we have the meadow, okay? So if we build that, instead of just getting a trade good when we use the farmer, we can get a book and a trade good. Here, if we use this architect, this black token here, you can build a building for 1 coin less. Here, instead of just getting, one book with the monk, or not the monk, but the librarian looking guy here, instead of getting 1 book, you get 2, and so on. And then this guy, you can, instead of getting a coin or building a building, you can get a coin and a book, and so on. And then they really start to kind of get really beefed up and juiced up as you go along here. So for example, let's look at this one. So with the blue worker, you can get 2, water routes instead of just 1, whereas like the previous one is a water route and a coin at the same time. Now the one thing to note about the buildings is these buildings are not available until 1 player builds the level 1 building. Once 1 player does that, then anybody can buy the level 2s. Once 1 player buys level 2s, then the 3s are unlocked, and so on. So there's kind of an interesting game of chicken here, which I'll talk about in my review with the whole building process. So the other thing, the last thing that you can do as far as taking actions is, instead of taking one of the basic actions or one of the building enhanced actions, you could take, let's say I pick the blue character here. Then I can go in here, and these are like the special deeds that you're sort of trying to accomplish. So I can cross off this, so I now can no longer do that action with the blue worker. I would get to do this action, which you should be able to see. You get a trade good in the market here, and then also a book. So the next time I could do it with this guy, cross that off, and do that. And then once you fill up all of these, the first person to do that will then get this bonus. They'll be the only one to get it. But then it deactivates that entire deed for everybody, so nobody else can come in here and take that action. You basically have shut that off. Now this one on the side here is only available in a 3+ player game, but this is kind of like an early game thing that you want to try to get after because the actions are a little bit better than the basic ones, and you're trying to race to get these little bonuses. Now the one thing that I've avoided until now is this monk action. So you notice there is no monk token in the bag here that you can get. What you can do is you can spend a monk, and you can basically have it act as if it's any of these. So it's like a wild. So one of the things you can do on your action is to take a token and then completely ignore what it does. And what you'll do is you'll cross off one of your 3 monks that you have here, and then you can take any action as if you had drawn any other token out of the bag. Now some of these deeds here require that you do that, because the only way to cross them out is with a monk. But remember, you can also get monks here from some of these bonuses, like here, and also down here and so on. So you can generate monks there. There's also some down here as you go up this track. So when you trigger that, then basically it's a wild action that you can do anything you want with. And so you don't, in that case, have to cross these off. But if you ever take the action, say, okay, I'm going to use that as a wild, you'll cross these off, and you're crossing off victory points. So the first one you cross off will basically lose you a point. The next one will lose you 2, and the last one will lose you 4. But that's the gist of the game. You've got, you're just drafting these tokens over a certain number of rounds. Again, you're trying to, this is kind of your big points here. Usually as you multiply the trading outposts and the citizens times your multiplier, add that. Any points you've got in the market or the bank, any leftover monk points, any points in their kind of like shield track, which we call this as your shield tracks, you just add all those up, and then you'll just put the points there at the end, and then whoever has the most points is the winner. Okay, so that is the Joan of Arc draw and write game. Let's just jump into my pillars. Let's start with playtime. I think if you're playing with like 1 or 2 players, it's going to be well under an hour. If you're playing with 4, it's probably an hour, maybe slightly more. Yeah, so it's it's like 45 minutes to an hour. The player count. Now I've only played it with 1, and I've only played it with 4, and I vastly preferred it with 4. The 1 player, I didn't like it really. I thought I kind of liked it, but then I played it with others, and the way that the buildings work is the main thing, because not only are you kind of racing to get those extra bonuses and advanced activities, but it kind of telegraphs a little bit of a strategy to the other players. And in the solo game, the thing just like eats a building and it just goes away. It doesn't really affect how it plays or anything. But in a multiplayer game, you can see, oh, I can see they're trying to go maybe down this route, or try to, go after like filling up their warehouse or their, their bank or whatever, and trying to do those different bonuses. And you can see what they might want to draft out of those different tokens. And so that comes into it. So I like that part of the game. And honestly, I think this is I'm not a roll and write person or flip and write person. There's something I've enjoyed. Probably my favorite would be Fleet. The Fleet roll and write. I think it's called Fleet the Dice game. I can't remember. But yeah, so Fleet the Dice game, I think is that, but now this is my favorite. The variability of the buildings, and like I said, the whole kind of watching strategies and that kind of stuff, and just really the interaction of the game. There's not a lot of direct interaction, of course, but the whole deed thing, that kind of early game part, is a really cool kind of concept, because there's just that little mini race at the beginning of the game that's really neat. And then you've got the different races for the buildings. And then there's races for the routes, because as you see like, oh, Billy's building down towards the southeast. Okay, I'm going to go up to the northwest, and we can kind of get our trading outposts. And then the more players that you add, the more kind of conflict you're going to have on those different routes. So that becomes really cool. So you got to really be watching each other's pads and their boards, basically. And that's something that is pretty much missing from most roll and write games. So there's just a lot to kind of consider, but it's not. Some of the roll and writes that I've seen and played, they're like way overly complex, whereas this one looks really complex, and it kind of delivers on that complexity, but it ends up not really being super complex in terms of like, whoa, I've got to do this and do that and do that. So it delivers on the promise of what you would want it to do, and that's something for me that I found missing in most of the others that I've played. So yeah, if you're a big roll and write person, I think this is my favorite, and I'm not a roll and write person, so I feel a little bit hesitant, but I think, man, they're gonna love this, because I don't really like it and I love it. And if you really love it, you're probably gonna really love it even more. So I don't know. If you like Orléans, it has a lot of similarities with that. So it's not kind of a nice, quick Orléans, and it has that same kind of vibe. The scoring is slightly different, but it has that same vibe as well. So yeah, and it comes with a ton of pads. And then the only thing is like kind of stinky, because I don't like the solo game. It's like half the, other side of the pads is all solo mode. And I'm like, I wish it was just all, multiplayer or something. And it was like, a little pad for solo games. Because, I don't know. Once you play with players, you miss out on all the cool dynamics of the game. It's serviceable solo, but it just, to me, I'm like, I never want to play it solo again. I want to only play it with players, just because of all the things that I mentioned. So anyway, that's Joan of Arc. Thanks.